300-pound dudes tackling you on a frozen field, the last thing you want to do is stay out there. Believe me, the Rams players were thinking about the jacuzzi at their team hotel, that they find it laughable, but more laughable if they totally disregard the trade whatsoever. This guy has transformed the balance of power in the Eastern Conference. And you could argue the entire defense is going to be absolutely ferocious next year. But if your number one priority is to win a Super Bowl, then J.J. Watt is making a grave mistake. To ride this Chad Henne experiment for an entire game, I might need a whole bottle of Hennessy just to get through that. Guy who's won 8 division titles, who's made 5 AFC championship appearances, who's reached the Super Bowl 3 times and has won 2 Super Bowls for this organization. Aaron Rodgers has only won 1 Super Bowl with Green Bay. Drew Brees has only won 1 Super Bowl with New Orleans. There's only 13 quarterbacks in NFL history that have won multiple Super Bowls, and Big Ben is one of those individuals. Good morning and welcome to Morning Joe right here on J&J Media Network, Facebook Live, Twitter, and on YouTube. I'm Jonah Malkin with you every single Monday and Wednesday morning, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. Some groundbreaking news just dropped this morning in college football. Texas and Oklahoma have officially announced their plans to leave the Big 12 to join the SEC. I'm going to touch on that. Some interesting news in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams, and a cryptic Instagram post of the Last Dance photo of Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. What does that mean about their long-term future? And all of that is coming up. But we start with the Olympics and the men's U.S. basketball team, and they suffered a stunning loss to France in the opener yesterday. This is the first time that the United States men's basketball team has lost an Olympic game in 25 straight games. It snaps a 25 straight Olympic game win streak for the U.S. men's national team since 2004 when they lost to Argentina. That was the last time that the U.S. men's national team lost a game at the Olympics. Was 17 years ago. The U.S., for some context, has played 144 national games at the Olympics. They've won 138 of those 144 games. They've only lost 6 times. They've only lost 6 times in the history of the U.S. men's national team. That's a 96.5% win percentage. Now, don't get me wrong. Teams are improving. Nations are improving. The skill set, the talent level across the board is astronomically higher. But let's be honest. The U.S. has won 6 of the last 7 gold medals, 15 of the total 19 gold medals ever played. And here's the one thing that we know. In ancient times, kings and monarchs were assassinated all the time. Why? Because of envy, because of jealousy. And typically that occurred when they let their guard down, when they felt complacent, when they felt settled. Why did the Roman Empire collapse? Well, Julius Caesar was betrayed and stabbed in the back by his best friend Brutus. It wasn't just that they formed a mutiny. They obviously formed a coup, but they stabbed him behind his back. He felt trusted. He was completely trusted, and he was stabbed in the back. And in a lot of ways, the same thing applies to, in Greek mythology, the Trojan War. Why did the Greeks win the war? They snuck into the city of Troy in a Trojan horse because Troy left their guard down. They let their guard down. They lost that war. Right? We've seen this across the board all the time. And so even after 9/11, what happened when you go fly and you go to airports? The security checkpoints, much more thorough, invasive, increased security and personnel. We respond after events happen. And what happened was in 1992, the Dream Team was formed, and they kind of cratered back into the sports axis to restore some balance and order. They said, okay, enough is enough. We're going to actually send our A-team. We're going to send our best troops, our best ANMO, and we're going to go win this Olympics. And they won by an average margin of 51.5 points per game in 1992 after they suffered a stunning defeat to the Soviet Unions in to the Soviets in 1988, losing that Olympics. And so that's what happens when you have such dominance and you experience such dominance for an extended period of time. You naturally let your guard down. This isn't a matter of being unpatriotic or lacking nationalism and a passion and appreciation for your country. I have no doubt that all of these guys that were sent out there for the U.S. men's national team, they care about winning the Olympics. They wouldn't fly across the globe to Tokyo if they just wanted to mail it in. If they just wanted to pack it in. But when we lost in 2004, that was a wake-up call, because now we formed the Redeem team with LeBron and Kobe and D. Wade and Chris Paul and Chris Bosh and Carmelo Anthony. Why? To show the world that we're not messing around, to restore balance, to restore order. And what it showed is that we can't send our B team, our C team to these Olympics and expect to win. We can't do that anymore. It requires us to send our A team, and it's not for a lack of talent. You look at this roster yesterday, and the best player on the floor should have been on the U.S. team. And instead, it was a French guy who plays in the NBA, Evan Fournier, who looked like an NBA All-Star, dropping 28 points. The U.S. was well positioned to win this game. They led by 10 early in the first half. They led by 7 down the stretch in the fourth quarter. And for the second time against France in 2 years that they've played, they blew a 7-point lead down the stretch. Zach LaVine missed a wide open 3, offensive rebound. KD misses a 3. Drew Holiday misses a 3 on the final possession. They had ample opportunities to get shots up to win this game, and they couldn't hit shots down the stretch. How did the U.S. lose to France in the 2019 FIBA World Cup? They led 74-67 midway through the fourth quarter and then gave up a 22-5 run to close the game. How did they lose last night? They led 74-67 midway through the fourth quarter, down the stretch of the fourth quarter, and they gave up a 16-2 run to close the fourth. And so for the second straight year, they blew, or the second straight meeting against France, they blew a golden opportunity. Now, again, this isn't the end-all, be-all. They still have Iran. They still have the Czech Republic to advance out of their group. But it exploited and exposed all of the biggest problems with this team. All the concerns that we've had about their chemistry, about their lack of size, that was on full display yesterday. Because it was the lack of size. It was the fact that France inserted Rudy Gobert and Vincent Poirier in the second half that dominated the glass, that clogged the middle. And in international basketball, the court isn't as big as it is in the NBA. The three-point line doesn't extend as far. So you're not shooting from quite the same distance. And it relies and revolves around ball movement. And the U.S. had great ball movement. They just could not make shots. KD, the two best guys for the U.S. were supposed to be KD and Dame. And those two were liabilities. KD was 4 for 12, 11 points. He fouled out in 21 minutes. Damian Lillard was 3 for 10 with 10 minutes. The best player for the U.S. team yesterday was Drew Holiday, who chipped in 18 points, was the leading scorer, 12 in the fourth quarter. And this is 3 days after celebrating an NBA championship with the Milwaukee Bucks. So I don't even care that he missed that final 3 because he was the saving grace and the best player for Team USA yesterday. Drew Holiday. Again, 3 days removed from celebrating for 72 straight hours an NBA championship, takes a private jet with Chris Middleton to Tokyo and steps up and nearly wins the game for him. That can't be what happens. That can't be who you rely on to win in these moments. And that's no knock on him because, again, I don't care that he missed the final shot. He'd been so productive up until that point that I'm giving him a pass. He just won an NBA title. The mere fact that he's there in Tokyo is impressive and should be commended. So when I think back to this game, the United States, they went on a cold stretch of 4.5 minutes in the fourth quarter, not scoring a single point. As I alluded to, the final offensive possession, they had 5 open shots, and they couldn't capitalize. And so, obviously, they got to shoot better, but they can't let Evan Fournier look like a Hall of Fame NBA player dropping 28 points. He hits that fall-away three. Again, they led by 7. And then they give up back-to-back threes. It's a 1-point game. Then Evan Fournier hits a fall away to give France a 2-point lead that they never relinquished or surrendered. And that was the end of the game. And I don't want to totally absolve Greg Popovich either, because his track record as the Olympic coach taking over for Mike Krzyzewski isn't great. This is his first go-around as well at the Olympics. So he's got some coaching that he's got to continue to do better. But at the same time, the players have to be more prideful and understand, hey, you're not just going to wake up and roll over these teams. And they got to be able to shoot the ball better, because that's what they're built on, is on their athleticism, is on their shooting. That's the only way they're going to win these games, because they're going to be out-rebounded practically every single game. The margin was +6 for France yesterday, and they just didn't have it. They just didn't have it. But again, so it's embarrassing. It's quite frankly shocking and extremely disappointing. And perhaps it is a little bit of a referendum on, hey, U.S. doesn't want to send their best guys, even though we have more than enough talent to withstand an Evan Fournier and a DeColo and a Rudy Gobert and a Nick Batum, who's 36 off the bench, and a Timofey Luwawu-Cabarrot. We should have enough ammo to offset that. But with that being said, they still have an opportunity to advance into the medal stage out of this group stage. They got Iran, they got Czech Republic. If they win out those 2 games, they should still advance. But again, the road is much more difficult. So, want to transition to some other big news that was just announced yesterday, that Bradley Beal is now strongly considering a trade from the Washington Wizards. He will likely make his decision ahead of the NBA free agents, the NBA draft, which is taking place this Thursday. And I've said this before, that we're living in a new age of the NBA. Player mobility. LeBron James has really engendered player mobility and player empowerment. We're seeing every single star. It's not a matter of a lack of loyalty towards your organization. It's about, where is the most conducive place for me to win an NBA title? LeBron obviously has left multiple places, Cleveland, Miami, back to Cleveland, to the Lakers. KD was drafted out of OKC. He left. Kawhi Leonard drafted out of San Antonio. He left. Anthony Davis drafted out of New Orleans. He left. Even Damian Lillard, now there are reports about there are conflicting reports about his long-term future in Portland. So this isn't a shock to me that Bradley Beal is announcing this now. To be honest, I've admired Bradley Beal for so long and have commended his loyalty and the trust and how dedicated he's been to this Washington Wizards franchise. He's been through the thick of it. The ups and the downs, the ebbs and the flows. He's played through the John Wall era, the 2 years post-John Wall injuries where he tore his ACL and ruptured his Achilles in back-to-back seasons. He's been in the doghouse with this team, and he's now lived through the Russell Westbrook experiment. So Bradley Beal, I have a great deal of respect and admiration for him as a basketball player, for him as a talent. This guy has averaged over 22 points per game in 9 seasons with the Wizards. He averaged 31.3 points per game last year. Finished second in the scoring title behind Steph Curry, averaged 30 points per game last year. So he's been really starting to string together some fantastic individual seasons. And the Wizards had a fairly successful season, all things being considered. But with that being said, he's finally come to the realization that the Wizards are not the place that he can win an NBA title or even compete and contend realistically for an NBA title. That's become apparent. That's become evident to him. And so now I want to list out the 3 teams and the 3 destinations that not only would most benefit his services, because you could argue that every single NBA team would love to have Bradley Beal. He's an unselfish player, shoots the 3 ball extremely well. He's a floor spacer. He's everything you want. He doesn't have an ego, great teammate. So every team would love to have him, but I think mutually beneficial. These are the 3 best places for Bradley Beal, both to be traded to and for him to want to play for. So at number 1 is the Boston Celtics. Listen, we've lived through this Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown duo and this experiment before. And I love Jaylen Brown. And by the way, this package would have to revolve around Jaylen Brown and some draft picks and some types of assets being sent over to the Washington Wizards as well. But this is why this makes sense for both teams. First of all, for the Boston Celtics, as I said, we've seen the limit and the ceiling of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Now, don't get me wrong, Jaylen Brown took a major step this year, and Jason Tatum is emerging as a superstar. He's been ascending every single year. His points per game have gone up every single season. But you've got the childhood friendships that have already been fostered between Bradley Beal and Jason Tatum. These guys are childhood friends. They grew up 5 minutes away from each other. They played at the same high school. They're 5 years apart, but they've got that history there. And so you know that they would love to play together. Their rapport is absolutely fantastic. And so for the Boston Celtics, now you'd really have a formidable duo with Jason Tatum and Bradley Beal. Fine, you already shipped off Kemba Walker. Try to build around those 2 guys. They'd have enough star power to make some noise in the NBA's Eastern Conference this year. And for the Washington Wizards, you may not get a better individual talent back and a better established player back than Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown, for much of the season for the Celtics, was the Celtics' best player. He's a 2-way versatile player, ideal 3-and-D guy, but can also go create his own shot. He's obviously taken steps forward every single season. And you have some draft picks that you surround that package with. And now if you're the Wizards, you're saying to yourself, okay, we've got our cornerstone player. Not to mention Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. They play the same exact position. You're looking at the same guy. One is a designated natural 3. The other one's a designated 2, but they play the exact same position. This deal would make sense for both teams. At number 2 is the Philadelphia 76ers. I've talked about the activity that the 76ers are going to be involved with a lot this offseason. I expect them to stay active in the offseason because the bottom line is Ben Simmons is gone. And so this would have to be a trade revolving Ben Simmons. The 76ers trade Ben Simmons, and again, perhaps a cast of picks or some assets for Bradley Beal. Now, why would this make sense for the 76ers? Well, the 76ers, their priority isn't just having a stable point guard, who can play make for others. That's not what they need. They need another star that can go create his own shot, that can provide a scoring punch to complement Joel Embiid. The reason why the 76ers came up extremely short was not just because Ben Simmons couldn't shoot, because we know he could play make, we know he can defend, but he clogs up the middle for Joel Embiid. He didn't provide that additional scoring punch and that additional scoring threat that the 76ers needed. They need a guy who can actually go out and consistently drop 25 to 30 points with Joel Embiid. Now you've got Joel Embiid, Bradley Beal, and Tobias Harris. You can plug in any simple point guard with these guys. Doesn't matter. You can bring back TJ McConnell if you want from the Indiana Pacers, and that's a great starting 5 right there. So Bradley Beal is a floor spacer, shoots the 3 ball extremely well, which is an area of need for the 76ers. Seth Curry was really their only guy. Danny Green went down in the postseason. So you have Bradley Beal to that mix. You add him to that mix. Okay, now the 76ers are not only in the same position as far as perhaps finishing with the best record in the Eastern Conference, but now they actually have a legitimate shot of winning the Eastern Conference, competing with the likes of the Bucks and the Brooklyn Nets. That makes sense for them. And for the Washington Wizards, as I've said, you get in return your new franchise player, Ben Simmons, in still a big market, enough of a market where he'd be still excited to play for, because that's the other key. We know that Ben Simmons has a bit of, he's got some drama with him. He likes to be a showman, and he's kind of a little bit of a diva, kind of needs a big market to thrive in it, with his popularity to continue to burgeon and grow. And DC is a big enough market where he can still flourish and enjoy himself, and the expectations are going to be lowered substantially. So this works out for both of these teams, and that's the second best location. And at number 3, it's been talked about before, but the Golden State Warriors. The Golden State Warriors with Bradley Beal would be absolutely menacing. They'd be absolutely disgusting offensively, because where have the Golden State Warriors always excelled the most at is shooting, floor spacing, ball movement, unselfishness. And this is a Golden State Warriors team that could create a package around they got 2 lottery picks this year, number 7 and the number 14 pick, along with Andrew Wiggins. You form some type of package surrounding that, and now you've got something special in the works. Washington, you perhaps could be drafting 2 starting caliber players with Andrew Wiggins. You could fill your roster with 3 starters going into next year. So you can kind of start a fresh team with these guys. In Golden State, listen, in my opinion, they were going to be contending for an NBA title with or without Bradley Beal last year. I thought that they were preparing themselves to make this huge return. Obviously, the last 2 years, they've kind of been in NBA purgatory, and they had really just taken a nosedive to the bottom of the NBA poll. The last 2 years, they've just been accruing picks, accruing assets and capital. And so I thought that just with the return of Klay Thompson, with Steph, with Klay, with Draymond, with James Wiseman, they'd have enough to make a run at an NBA title. Now you throw in Bradley Beal. Yeah, they might be a little bit undersized in the backcourt. Steph at the 1, Beal at the 2, Thompson at the 3, then Draymond and James Wiseman. That's your starting 5. That's a championship-winning starting 5 right there. And they shoot the ball at such a prolific level that if you add Bradley Beal, their perimeter game is going to be off the charts. Steph, Klay, and Bradley Beal on the floor together, you'd have to be absolutely strapped to them, to the hip. You'd have to be cinched to their hip and not allowing them to absolutely get a shot off at any time, which, again, the range that all of them would have together would be absolutely devastating. Be absolutely devastating for any team. And so, again, Wizards would be able to quickly rebuild in their own right. I think that this would be a trade that could work out for both teams. So those are the 3 locations. Those are the 3 destinations that I think would work wonders for both. Bradley Beal, I think he'd be excited to go to either of those 3 places. And I think that what the Wizards would, and not to mention, that would be the impetus for trading Russell Westbrook, because he would be kind of a lame duck point guard. And so you could probably trade him and collect more talent as well. So I think that this would be an incredible trade, either 3, because, again, he wants to be traded to a contending team. And those 3 teams are contenders. Yes, I've heard murmurs about the Atlanta Hawks, and don't get me wrong, of course, they deserve a lot of credit. They reached the Eastern Conference Finals last year, and he and Trae Young with John Collins and Clint Capella would be a nice starting rotation. But I still like these other 3 locations a little bit better. So, transitioning to college football, this is the big announcement, the big hammer that was just dropped about 35 minutes before I was set to go on air this morning. Texas and Oklahoma have officially announced their plans to leave the Big 12 Conference to go formally join the Southeastern Conference, the SEC. They dropped the hammer. this morning. Obviously, there were rumblings within the past couple of days about them expressing interest in joining the SEC. The Big 12 committee and executives tried talking to the presidents of Texas and Oklahoma to try and dissuade them from joining the SEC. They approached them with this new proposal for a larger cut in the revenue that would be given and distributed to Texas and Oklahoma. And obviously, this comes on the heels of the Big 12's popularity plummeting and on the heels of the college football playoff likely to be expanding, the college football playoff expansion pretty much inevitable in the future. But overall, I think that this is terrible for college football. I actually think that this is an awful thing for college football for a bevy of reasons. First of all, the Big 12 conference is absolutely going to dissolve now. There will be no Big 12 conference. They will cease to exist. You have the two bell cows of the conference, Texas and Oklahoma, and you now remove them from the conference. They were keeping the conference afloat and barely afloat as is. Now you're hoping that Oklahoma State, Kansas State, West Virginia, Baylor, Texas Tech, some non-Power 5 teams, if you bring in a Cincinnati or BYU or a Houston to still hold up this conference, it's not going to happen. They will cease to exist. And so now you're no longer looking at a Power 5, you're looking at a Power 4 because all of the teams, all the remaining teams are going to be poached and likely poached by other rival conferences. So that's first of all. So the Big 12 in the next couple of years, and by the way, they declined their decision to renew their TV rights. It expires in 2025. So 2025, after the 2025 season, is when this would take into effect. So for a couple years, yes, you'll still have the rivalries: Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Texas, Texas Tech. But now, after 2025, the Big 12 will absolutely dissolve. It will cease to exist. That's number one. Number two, to me, this is just a desperate ploy to make some money. It's a desperate money grab move by, to be honest, both of these teams. Now, I will preface my comments by saying that I think more of the backlash and the vitriol should be aimed, and really the disappointment should be aimed in the direction of Texas more so than Oklahoma. Because Oklahoma has proven over the past several years that this is a legitimate university in college football. This is a program that has established itself as one of the premier, one of the elite programs in college football. But the thing is, when you look at the distribution of revenue among the Power 5 conferences, last year, the Big 10 had the most amount of revenue, making $780 million. The SEC followed right behind them at $721 million. You had the Pac-12 coming in at number 3 with $530 million. The ACC finished ahead of the Big 12 with $455 million. And last place among the Power 5 conferences when it came to revenue was the Big 12, finishing with $430 million. And the reason is because of the TV contracts. The Big 12 is the only conference in college football that doesn't have their own lone individual network. There's a Big 10 network, there's an SEC network, there's a Pac-12 network, there's an ACC network. The Longhorns network for Texas, that's the only individual network that exists within the Big 12, is Texas's individual network that only covers Texas football, exclusively Texas athletics and Texas football. So for these teams, they understand, hey, if we join the SEC, bigger revenue, more revenue means there's going to be a greater cut for us. But to be honest, while that's true, and I understand that, there's an easy solution to this. If you're the Big 12, what you should have done was simply gone out and created a Big 12 network. I don't really understand the reticence to do it. I didn't understand the hesitancy and the patient approach that they employed when it came to this, because, yeah, you're the last ones to be establishing anything. And so No wonder these two teams are wanting to leave. But that doesn't mean that I think it's good for college football. That's number two. Number three is, again, Texas is trying to position, and Oklahoma, they're trying to position themselves for this upcoming TV deal that's going to be extremely lucrative in the next couple of years, where I believe could be over $1 billion that is being invested in these other conferences, in these networks, especially the SEC, with the clout that they have and the fact that they already brought in they already had $721 million in revenue last year. You add Texas and Oklahoma, those numbers are going to spike up. And so each team would get a greater slice of the pie. So Texas and Oklahoma is going to make more money off the TV rights deal that's going to be looming in the next couple of years. The other thing is, and this is kind of the fourth reason why I actually don't think that this is good for college football, is that if the logic and the rationale for Texas and Oklahoma is, hey, the SEC provides and offers more exposure, if that's truly what it comes down to, is exposure, well, it could be exposure. It could also be exposing their biggest flaws and their deficiencies and their weaknesses. Because when you look at Texas and Oklahoma, again, yes, Oklahoma, they've always been an elite program. They've made the college football playoff 4 times since its inception in 2014, which is extremely, extremely impressive. And so they're an elite program. But Texas, the last time that they made a BCS title game or were even really in position to be contending for one was in 2009 when they won the BCS title game. That's the last time they won the Big 12, was in 2009. They obviously won the BCS national championship in 2005 with Mack Brown as the head coach and Vince Young over USC in the Rose Bowl. They won 41-38. We all remember that iconic 4th and 8 run from Vince Young to upset Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart. That team went 13-0, one of the greatest national title games in college football history. But you think that a team like Texas is going to win multiple games and achieve and attain a lot of success in an SEC conference when they can't even win the Big 12? Again, they haven't won the Big 12 since 2009. That's the last time Texas won the Big 12. So if anything, now you're playing against Alabama, Auburn, LSU, Georgia, Florida, Texas A&M. To me, that's going to actually expose. Yes, there'll be more exposure technically because you might be on national television a little bit more, but it also may highlight the inherent flaws within the program that haven't been discussed enough. And it may actually extract and divulge just more negative information about the team, to be honest. So that's number 4. Because again, you need what do we reward in college football? College football rewards programs that have sustained levels of success, sustained levels of achieving wins, of winning. This is a meritocracy in college football to a degree. Obviously, there are a lot of smaller non-Power 5 programs that have sustained winning. And so meritocracy would suggest that they would be considered and garner more consideration. But the reality is, why does Alabama get the benefit of the doubt? Well, they've won so many national championships. Why does Oklahoma keep getting inserted in? Well, they've held their own against the SEC. They've dominated the Big 12. Why does Ohio State keep getting the benefit of the doubt? Well, because they've got a program that's won multiple NCAA titles. They've won multiple national titles. They're universally respected. Why is the SEC garner so much consideration and hold so much power? They wield so much power is because they've showed dominance in college football for so many years. So the thing is, when we look at the college football's inevitable expansion to at least a 12-team league, Texas and Oklahoma are saying, well, we'd like to better position ourselves in a conference that gets rewarded more given the gauntlet of a schedule. And while that logic makes sense, And they certainly believe that a 3-loss Texas or Oklahoma team, or maybe even a 4-loss team, would outbid a 1-loss Big 12 team, or a 1-loss or 2-loss Pac-12 or Big 10 or ACC or Big 12 team. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the case. And so you're going to absolutely dissolve all the rivalries that have existed. And obviously, not that they care, but you're going to sour and embitter the relationship that you have with the other schools in the Big 12 conference. Oklahoma State will be ticked off, Kansas State, Kansas, Texas Tech, Baylor. Every single school, again, not that they care, Texas and Oklahoma, they care about the bottom line. And the bottom line is they're more concerned about their bottom line than the bottom lines of the other teams. But this is the overarching thing. I hate hearing the argument, oh, well, listen, Texas and Oklahoma, this is going to help us with recruiting. Well, no, it's not. The reality is Texas, for example, has already had, over the last 10 years, they've averaged the 7th best recruiting class in college football. 2018 and 2019, Texas has had a top 3 recruiting class in college football. Oklahoma consistently has a top 10, top 5 recruiting class in college football. This isn't about a dearth of talent. This isn't about not having enough talent. This could be as simple as we need to hold the players and, more importantly, the coaches more accountable. This is about the front office and the athletic directors of Texas and Oklahoma making better hiring decisions. If you want a better team, get a better coach. I hate hearing this argument that, well, Texas and Oklahoma, they don't have enough. Being in the SEC, they will widen the pool. They'll broaden the pool of recruits. Their brands are big enough as is, where recruiting isn't an issue. You have the talent. Can you execute? Can you deliver? Oklahoma has proven that they can, which is why, again, they've got a little bit more to stand on. They've got a stronger argument to jump to the SEC because they've got a tremendous amount of leverage, even though I still don't think they should. Texas, you've had a lot of talent. Make a better coaching hire that can bring the best out of their players. That's what it comes down to. Because the players and the coaches have to be held more accountable. It's not the SEC, the Big 10, the ACC, the Pac-12's fault that Texas, when in seasons they should be going 12-1, they finish 11-3, or they finish 10-4. You have to execute as a program, and that's, to be honest, it's not going to help their recruiting classes at all. So to me, I don't like this move. I think that it's a bit pitiful. I think that it's a money grab, and it could actually be detrimental to both of these programs. Do I think that ultimately they will make more money in the SEC? Yes. And that's true that if that's all they care about, which clearly it is, that's what the boosters care about, then I understand the decision from a financial standpoint. The finances don't add up to stay in the Big 12, but at the same time, when you look at a moral, when you look at a competitive standpoint, this just falls exceedingly short in all of those departments, to be honest, and is quite unfortunate. It's quite unfortunate that these programs had to sell themselves out, had to sell themselves short for some financial incentive. Because I don't think they're going to be better positioned to make the college football playoff in the future just because they're joining the SEC. What better positions you to attain success, to reach the college football playoff, is winning in your conference, is winning in your division, is taking care of the games that you're supposed to take care of. So I think that this is a bit of a cop-out, personally. So transitioning to the NFL, there was some big news out of Green Bay. And I know that we've been talking about the Packers in their offseason and Aaron Rodgers and this entire rigmarole. It seems a bit incessant at this point. But there has been over the weekend this image and this Instagram story that has surfaced. Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams both shared the same cryptic last dance photo of Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen high-fiving. And this comes on the heels of Davante Adams and his representation unable to work out and negotiate a deal yet with Packers management about an extension. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers has revealed his dissatisfaction with the Packers, with Brian Gutekunst, with Mark Murphy. And so we understand all the context that already exists here. We already understand that. And apparently it was just reported that the Packers obviously had offered Aaron Rodgers a new contract extension that would have made him the highest paid player in the NFL, not just as the quarterback, but in the entire NFL. And apparently there's a rumor that Aaron Rodgers now may want a new deal that would pay him $90 million guaranteed over the next 2 years, which is even higher than apparently the deal that was initially proposed to him in the beginning. So everything with Aaron Rodgers has been opaque. Everything's been ambiguous and equivocal this offseason. And so, to me, the reason why this is actually significant is a number of reasons. We obviously know that Davante Adams, while he's come out and admitted that Aaron Rodgers' future, that's his own business. His dealings with Packers management, that's his own business. But he has admitted that Aaron Rodgers' future will have an impact on his long-term future with the Packers. So it's not to suggest that they necessarily go hand in hand, that whatever Aaron Rodgers does, Davante Adams is going to get involved in and follow. But what it does highlight is, okay, these two have spoken. The fact that they both shared this photo means that they've had extensive conversations among one another, laying out their emotions, laying out their vision for the Packers, laying out their vision together, whatever short-term or long-term that means. Whatever that means in the future, they've talked about it. What the fact that they both shared this same story means that they've spoken. And listen, both of them want to play with one another, because the reality is they both achieved the most success with one another. Now, you can argue, well, Aaron Rodgers won a Super Bowl without Davante Adams. One with Jordy Nelson and Greg Jennings. That's true. But both of these guys have elevated the statuses of one another substantially more based on their play. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers won his third MVP, 4,300 yards, 48 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 71% completion percentage. He was fantastic. And partly that was because of the greatness of Davante Adams, the fact that he always offered a viable target for Aaron Rodgers to quickly get rid of the ball, get rid of the football to. Davante Adams, conversely, has also had a tremendous season. 1,300 yards, 18 touchdowns, right? So vice versa, these two guys have complemented each other in ways that they understand. There aren't many other quarterback and wide receiver duos that rival the production that they do. They understand that, which is why, to me, both of these guys are shrewd operators, and this is why I actually think that this will, in fact, be their final season together in Green Bay. I think that this photo, which, again, encapsulated the last dance, there's a reason why this was specifically called the last dance. There's a reason why these two shrewd operators specifically picked this image to perfectly encapsulate the season they're about to embark on. Why was this so noteworthy in the last dance? Well, because the cause of the rift, the cause of the fracture of the schism was because of Bulls management. Jerry Krause refused to allow Phil Jackson to continue to gain more power within the organization. And he ousted Phil Jackson and told the players and told Phil Jackson to himself, hey, you're not going to be returning. That obviously bittered Michael Jordan, who refused to play with any other coach. So at the end of this season, he would be retiring for 2 years. And Jerry Krause didn't want to bring the whole gang back together with Dennis Rodman and Scottie Pippen. New contracts were coming up for Michael Jordan as well. And so it was Bulls management that caused the rift in the beginning. Well, the reason why that picture perfectly embodies the situation here is because Rodgers and now Davante Adams believe that it's Packers management that's causing the rift here. I've spoken about this at great length. For Aaron Rodgers, this has never been about money. Aaron Rodgers loves Green Bay. He wants to remain in Green Bay. He'll likely remain in Green Bay, I believe, for one more season this year. What's come down to is respect and a broken trust that had been established and then was no longer existing. That's what this came down to. Doesn't matter how much money you give Aaron Rodgers. At the end of the day, this comes down to him being spiteful, him feeling betrayed, and him holding a grudge against this organization for drafting Jordan Love. That's all it comes down to. And no amount of money, to my opinion, is going to patch that over and is going to save that relationship. It may delay the inevitable by another year, which is why I think this photo was chosen, is because I think that this is the last season that both of these two players will play together in Green Bay. Davante Adams may remain in Green Bay, but it's not going to be with Aaron Rodgers. And if Aaron Rodgers leaves the Packers, there's a good chance that Davante Adams will follow suit. Because why is he going to want to stay with an inexperienced and an unproven Jordan Love? He may love the guy, but he doesn't know really what he's got. And so I just think that, again, there's a reason why this specific photo was chosen. This wasn't random. They didn't just pick some random photo chronicling the history between Michael Jordan and the Bulls. They specifically chose a photo from The Last Dance to illuminate this is our last run together. Whatever that means, whatever that ends in. This will be the last season that both of them play in a Packers uniform. I do at least together. Again, I think that Aaron Rodgers will he'll come to training camp at some point. He'll play for the Packers this year. Same thing with Davante Adams, but they mutually, I think, understand that this is their last ride together. Okay. So finally, final topic before my Malkin's moments. There's some news out of the Lakers that obviously free agency is about to start, and Kyle Lowry, who's a coveted veteran point guard, has been eyeing the LA Lakers so far this offseason. Now, apparently the 76ers, the Mavs, the Pelicans, and the Heat are also expected to be top suitors for Lowry. His former teammate DeMar DeRozan has expressed interest in joining the Lakers as well. They're on his radar ahead of free agency. But there are a few maxims in sports. And there's one maxim right now that's applied to the NBA more so than anything else. And that is that aggressiveness wins. The teams that have been the most aggressive in the offseason, that have been the most bold, the most courageous, that have showed some gumption, those have directly resulted and led to wins. You look at the last 3 NBA champions. What do they all have in common? Aggressive off seasons. The Milwaukee Bucks just won the NBA title this past year. Who did they trade for? Who was their big offseason acquisition? Drew Holiday. Yes, they had to dip into the luxury tax. It resulted in a championship. 2 years ago, the Lakers made a big trade for Anthony Davis. They win a title. 3 years ago, the Toronto Raptors make a trade to sign Kawhi Leonard. Results in an NBA title. And when you're looking at LeBron James, we know that their main objective with the Lakers is to surround LeBron James with playmakers that will reduce his playmaking responsibilities and duties. That's what the Lakers want. That's what the Lakers need. And so when it comes to LeBron, when you look at his entire career, over the course of LeBron's career, throughout his entire career as an NBA player, he plays with the same types of guys. He wants proven veterans that are established in this league. Why did he go to Miami? Proven Dwayne Wade, an NBA champion. Proven all-star in Chris Bosh. Why did he, when he went to Cleveland, he traded away Andrew Wiggins for Kevin Love. He goes to the Lakers, has to play one season with Lonzo, B.I., Josh Hart, gets them shipped out of town, and brings in Anthony Davis. He's even trying to get rid of Kyle Kuzma on the team as well, which I don't blame him. Kyle Kuzma may need to go. And so he wants an established point guard and, more importantly, an established player that he can rely on to create and be consistent night in and night out. And the bottom line is the Lakers need they desperately need a consistent veteran point guard. Dennis Schroeder, I think he's got the talent to be a top 3 player on a championship team. But the reality is he was grossly disappointing this postseason. And even though Dennis the Menace can be a really talented NBA player, he came up short. And his ego and his personality got in the way and kind of disrupted and muddled up the chemistry that existed within this team. The Lakers clearly don't want to sign him and have him be a part of their long-term future at the price that he's seeking. And so they'll probably sign and trade him somewhere. And again, I understand he came off of COVID, didn't play, missed 10 days, was inactive for 10 days. But the reality is his chemistry and relationship with LeBron and AD was questionable at best. Very murky going long term. It was just questionable at best to me, and to be honest, pretty unstable as well. And he viewed himself in the same light as the LeBron, as the AD, and that didn't work. And so if you're Kyle Lowry at age 35, to me, he would be an absolutely perfect fit for the Lakers for a number of reasons. First of all, when you look at those teams that he's considering, the Mavs, I don't understand why that would be a good fit for him whatsoever. He and Luka both need the ball. I don't understand why that fit would be good. It wouldn't. The Pelicans are intriguing. I don't think Kyle Lowry would want to go there. They're not a contending team. I like B.I. I love Zion Williamson. But even with Kyle Lowry, they need much more to help stabilize and elevate that team. The Heat are interesting, but to be honest, the Heat need more star power. And I think that Kyle Lowry is going to be in the same position as he was a couple years ago on a good team competing, but the Miami Heat don't have enough talent to have a backcourt duo of Kyle Lowry and Jimmy Butler win you an NBA title. I don't think that's going to be enough to win. The only 2 destinations that actually seem viable and are good locations are the Lakers, or the aforementioned Lakers, and the Philadelphia 76ers. Obviously with Philly, born in Philly, played at Villanova, so playing for his hometown team, the 76ers could use a veteran point guard to stabilize the team, to provide that leadership, provide that accountability, provide that dog that they're missing. He would certainly be a good fit, but this is why he'd be a better fit with the Lakers. First of all, the Western Conference, as deep and talented as it is, it's not nearly as top-heavy as the Eastern Conference. The Eastern Conference, you got to go through the Nets, you got to go through the Bucks, 2 extremely formidable teams in the East. The West, if you really look at the contending teams in the West, you got the Lakers, the Clippers, the Warriors, and the Phoenix Suns. The Jazz, no disrespect to the Jazz, I love the Jazz, but we've seen what they've been in the postseasons. And then you look at those teams, you say to yourself, okay, well, the Phoenix Suns had a great run this year. I don't expect them to be quite as formidable next year. The Warriors, there are big question marks surrounding Klay Thompson's health. How good will he be? So I'm not sure about their future necessarily. Their future kind of hinges on whether or not they bring another star player back and the uncertainty surrounding Klay Thompson. The Clippers, Kawhi Leonard just tore or partially tore his ACL. He may miss the entire season, if not half of the season. We're not sure how they're going to look. They probably won't be able to sign Reggie Jackson. So the Lakers are primed with a Kyle Lowry to win an NBA title right now. Here's the other thing. If you're Kyle Lowry, you perfectly plug a hole and fill a void that the Lakers need. They need a veteran point guard who can play make for LeBron, can take off some of the responsibilities from LeBron. He can shoot the three ball. He can stretch the floor. And he will actually play a big role and be a big contributor on a Lakers team. He's not just going to be a little piece in the cog. He'll still be a major contributor, which I think is something that still is enticing to him. He doesn't want to feel like he's just a bench player or a role player with the Lakers. He won't be. So I think that that's a big reason. And he'll have great chemistry with LeBron. LeBron respects guys that have fight, that have hunger. That's why he and Rondo clicked, is because they had mutual respect for one another. And I think that, listen, the battles that Lowry and LeBron have had over the years, I think would only make their relationship deeper and much more fortified. And I think that Kyle Lowry, again, will be a great influence on the team. I think the coaches love him. The players respect him. And he would be a great fit with the Lakers. Again, I think the 76ers are a good option too, but the Lakers are the better choice. All right, finally, my Malkins moments. Have a number of great Malkins moments this Monday, especially from the Olympics starting. Just a fantastic run to the Olympics. Shout out to the Americans winning 6 of 12 potential gold medals on Sunday. That is actually better. That's more gold medals than they won during the Michael Phelps era on a single day. Big shout out to them. Big shout out, first of all, to Cameron Champ, who won the 3M Open Golf Tournament. He was fending off dehydration. He shot 5 under 66 on Sunday. He finished the tournament 15 under 269, which is an absolutely sensational score. And this is a guy who's 26. He's a newlywed and has been finding some recent success. It's his third victory as a pro, third career victory. He joined Colin Morikawa, who obviously just won the U.S. Open, John Rahm, and Bryson DeChambeau is the only under 28 players to win in each of the past 3 seasons on tour. Big shout out Luka Doncic, dropped 48 points in his Slovenian debut as Slovenia beat Argentina 118 to 110, 100. Luka's been sensational. It's clearly not a fluke. International basketball is where we knew he would thrive and excel because he'd been playing pro basketball in Europe for about 4 years at age 15 before he made the switch to the NBA. So that's impressive to drop 48 points. It's tied for the second most ever in an Olympics game. Tied Eddie Palubinskas. Apologies to that family for my butchering of his last name. He also scored 48 for Australia in the 1976 Olympics in Montreal. The record's held by Oscar Schmidt, who scored 55 points. That's the most. And Luka Doncic probably would have surpassed and eclipsed that record had his head coach left him in there. Australia has a rising swimmer in Ariarne Titmus, who actually beat the American legend Katie Ledecky for gold in the Olympics. For the women's 400-meter freestyle, extremely impressive. I love watching the swim meets. Those are some of my favorite events at the Summer Olympics every single time I see them, because you don't watch swimming meets too often. And so she trailed by a full body length halfway through the meet. And yet it's an 8-lap race. And despite that, she clocked in at 3 minutes, 56.69 seconds. That's the second fastest time in women's history ever. And obviously Ledecky is a gold champion and a legend in her own right. And she's a she holds the world record. She finished obviously silver with a 3 minutes 57 second and 57:36 time. That's she posted the 4th fastest time ever. The U.S. men's gold team, the U.S. men's team took gold in the 4x100 relay meter freestyle relay. And they've got this guy, Caleb Dressel, who has been hailed to be the successor to Michael Phelps. So big shout out to them for winning. They won with a time of 3 minutes, and 8:97 seconds, the third fastest time in history. Britain's Adam Peaty repeated as the Olympic champion in the men's 100-meter breaststroke. He's already the world record holder for becoming the first man to break both 58 and 57 seconds in his signature event. He posted the fifth fastest time in history, 57.37 to blow away the field. And finally, Maggie McNeil captured Canada's first gold medal at the pool with a victory in the women's 100 butterfly. She's the reigning world champion, touched off first with 55.59 seconds. So that's all the time that I got for today. Wow, a couple minutes over. Thank you so much, though, for joining me right here on Morning Joe every Monday and Wednesday morning, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. Make sure to subscribe to my YouTube page, Morning Joe with Jonah Malkin. Follow me on Twitter, Morning Joe with Jonah Malkin, or just Jonah Malkin on Twitter and on Instagram. And as always, have a lovely rest of your morning.